we're going to talk about MySQL versus MariaDB. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. And are there any DBAs in this room? DBAs? Good. Okay. DevOps? All right. Okay. So we have mixed audience over here. This talk is designed for comparing MySQL versus MariaDB. As some of you know, MariaDB is no longer a drop-in replacement for MySQL, and it's actually steered away. And I will not get into too much details about the history and the background. That's in my MySQL ecosystem talk. If you want to take a look at it, I can provide you links for that, which talks about a little bit of history from the inception of both MySQL and MariaDB, where they came from and where they are at right now. In this talk, we would like to talk about the features, comparison, the behavior, and some other discussion. And I would like a really good feedback from you, because your experience is more important. And then we can go from there. So who am I? My name is Alkin. I'm from Istanbul, Turkey, and I live in Istanbul. I've been in database domain for over 25 years now, and done enterprise databases, enterprise companies, and everything else. But I moved into open source area and specializing in MySQL for the last 10 years. And if anybody wants to talk about sailing or any other outdoor sports, find me at the hallway. I mean, we can discuss along with some of the database stuff you might have. And that's my Twitter handle if you'd like to connect. I know LinkedIn has some problems in Russia. I'm in LinkedIn, Twitter, all other social media. If you want to reach out to me, ask questions, or discuss something else, you can find me. So today's agenda for MySQL versus MariaDB, we have going to talk about installation, differences, authentication, storage engines, what are the clustering options, and routing and proxy, how do they handle security and encryption, backup and recovery, most importantly, and some performance and benchmarks, which will be slightly lightly handled for this talk. Okay, I will give you an example of why I say that. And we start with the installation. So installation for MySQL 8 is very straightforward. Basically, yum packages comes in. It's available for most Linux distributions, but I must note that MariaDB has been the default engine for the most distributions recently. But it is available for the yum repos that you can actually download. For Fedora, they also provide RPM packages. And you can even compile your own packages using RPM packages. And for the basically, you just download the proper package and then use the yum tool, and then install MySQL. And so we will look into the installation steps, but for the Debian packages, slightly different. You have to install the Debian packages and proper version, and then set it up that way. The way that it works is MySQL 8 onwards, you have a temporary password generated in the log file, and then grab for the temporary password and find that password, and then I'll show you how to do that over here. So basically, first of all, the server gets initialized, you get a SSL certificate generated, and then the validate password policy is established. Along with the temporary password generated, you actually have to grab that, log into MySQL using that temporary password, and then generate a password, which is a kind of a complex password with uppercase, lowercase, special character, and minimum of 8-digit password requirement. So this is what MySQL 8 comes out of the box if you actually install it. On the MariaDB side, you have a downloadable script. You get it from the downloads, mariadb.com, and find the repo, download it. It gets piped in and installed, and then you can actually use the yum repo to install it. It's pretty straightforward, unless you already have it in your Linux distribution. So that's MariaDB handles that way. On the Debian side is also the packages are slightly different than the yum repos. You just go and find the correct Debian distro, and then download and use the apt tool. So these slides will be available. So it's uploaded on the website. So don't need to take much pictures, but if you do, it's fine. So now we downloaded, found the correct package managers for both, and then we have, what do we have in MySQL 8 and authentication? We have a super user account with root at the local host level, and as I mentioned, it's stored in the log file. So it's traditionally, if you are actually coming back from the older version, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, this wasn't the case, and then you might just say, okay, yum install, start MySQL, and how do I log in? It just gives you like you can't log in, and that the password is in the log file. And then it applies the single authentication method per user, which is slightly different than MariaDB because you have multiple authentication methods per user. You get like the native password, Unix socket, and then the native password will actually force you to create the password. If you use the traditional method, it'll error out. So this is the authentication method for the MariaDB, and basically they're very close to each other in terms of installation and the authentication, just like small nuances in between as a difference. Other than that, so far pretty close. They actually follow the similar password policies, and actually access is pretty much straightforward. From the storage engine side, out of the box, we call it a stock Oracle or Community Edition Oracle MySQL 8. You get these storage engines. And among those, on MySQL 8, we have a change in the default engine to InnoDB, where it used to be MyISM in the previous versions, and then InnoDB has become the default engine. And also, I don't know, you've noticed there's a performance scheme also. Performance scheme is actually, it's for a database. It's for a database and a storage engine, and it's actually keeping internal wait events for all the performance statistics, and it's available to actually query, and it's basically use it. And the extension for this we use it at Percona is using monitoring tools, and we query this a lot. So it's very important. The other engines are, I don't know if you heard about it, but they've been there for a while. Not all of them are widely adopted, but there is a black hole, CSV, and archive, which we rarely used it for occasions. If you have to actually archive some data or keep it for CSV for some other data ingestion and migrations, it is possible to use these tools, these engines actually. So on the MariaDB side, slightly different with the plugins. So I actually want to mention over here, we are not actually comparing to compare apples to apples. Stock MySQL 8 comes with these, but Percona server actually has these additional plugin engines also available. Some of them, TokuDB and RocksDB, and in the MariaDB, also the default storage engine is exactly DB, and the rest of the engines are very similar, with addition to ARIA and some of the other plugin databases called QGraph and Spider. Some of them are, I think, used for special areas. I'm not very experienced or had any POCs on them. Okay, so we are now at the clustering options. And so how do we do clustering in MySQL? MySQL out of the box comes with group replication. Group replication is available since 5.7. At MySQL 8, it has been worked out a lot. There's a lot of updates on it. And then now it's called InnoDB cluster, which consists of 3 different modules, and the group replication, MySQL shell, and the MySQL router are the components of InnoDB cluster, where you actually have a clustering option comes out of the box. With that said, this is not Enterprise Edition. This is still Community Edition, and it's also available in a Percona server. So you could basically use this. MariaDB is still on the Galera side. Galera is a write set replication clustering method that actually adopted into Galera server. It's available as a library, a separate package. But the 10.4 onwards, it comes with updated or upgraded Galera 4 libraries, which is announced, I believe, earlier this year. So Has anyone familiar with Galera over here? Okay. Anyone with ExtraDB cluster? Okay. So ExtraDB, Percona ExtraDB cluster uses Galera libraries as a baseline, and as a third party or addition to clustering option, we also have Percona ExtraDB cluster to be used on version 8, and it will be adopting in the Galera 4, Galera version 4 libraries. Okay. So we have routing and proxy. This is one of our scalability problems on a large scale installations. And MariaDB has MaxScale product. And MaxScale product was open source licensed and up until version 2. And after version 2 onwards, it became BSL license, which has specific restrictions. On the MySQL 8 side, we still have the MySQL router. MySQL router is not something new. It's been there for a while, but it's been updated and upgraded, available both community and enterprise editions. But I must note that Proxy SQL is our de facto proxy for MySQL. It works both MySQL 8, Percona server, or MariaDB. It's been widely adopted right now. It's been used by very high transaction sites at this point. And is anyone using like MaxScale or Proxy SQL over here? Okay, so not much know-how over here. But if you want to talk about the proxying, what they do and what are they used for, you can actually come back and we can have a discussion on that. 2 years ago, this is my second time in Moscow. 2 years ago, I had a talk over here in HighLoad about Proxy SQL use cases. So, and security and encryption. So. Okay, MySQL 8 has a lot of improvements on data at rest encryption, and basically you have other than enterprise edition options, we have pretty much everything encrypted, and basically it provides. I also want to note that we have a lot of improvements on our Percona server edition that has covers some of the enterprise edition features on the encryption side. So for more secure MySQL 8 enterprise edition or Percona server are options. On the especially these plugins, the keyring plugins are only available on HashiCorp Vault, and encrypted files are only available on enterprise edition at this point, but you could still use the Percona server for that, Percona server 8 for that. On the MariaDB side, they have pretty good implementation of transparent data encryption. It's been improved in 10.4, and it can do everything but anything but everything encryption. And then it does actually have plugins to do data at risk encryption, except the Vault. So on this slide, we have HashiCorp Vault available in enterprise plugin for MySQL 8, or you could use Percona server. It's been available since 5.7, and we have researched a little bit that if 10.4 already implemented this, but it still remains as a feature request. Okay. On the data masking, continue on the security and data masking side. So for data masking, on the MySQL 8 side, you only have an option for Enterprise Edition if you need to mask your active data set. Or you could use proxies. In the MariaDB side, there's a MaxScale. It actually allows you to do masking. And on the Proxy SQL, there's a way to basically do, I am missing a link over here, but there's a kind of a example by Fred that actually implemented Proxy SQL data masking towards. Basically, it's putting a layer between a database and a connection, and then the connection comes in, it gets masked in the proxy layer, and then sends a request to the database. While you're receiving, it masks the data, and it only shows using regex things. And basically, it is possible to do it, but if you really need an enterprise solution, with the MySQL world, we only have it available on MySQL 8 Enterprise Edition. Okay. The auditing, the audit plugin is available by Percona, and MariaDB has an audit plugin also. And MySQL 8 on the Enterprise Edition side comes with audit plugin. This is, especially the Percona one, is widely used for audit plugin. And I don't know if anyone experienced over here, but it's a very common thing to enable the plugin and basically have an auditing available in MySQL distributions. Percona audit plugin also works with Percona server. Over here, I must mention that, and those are based off of a community edition. It's not doesn't require any licensing. Basically, you could download and use it at your own. We have the backup and recovery. So, how do we do backup and recovery in MySQL world? MySQL 8 has, from historically, MySQL dump is there, of course, and it's been improved to adapt to MySQL 8 changes, because there are so many changes in MySQL 8 compared to earlier versions, internally and externally. MySQL pump has been there. Enterprise backup, they're hot backup for online backups. That's only available on Enterprise Edition. And 8.0.17, which is super recent this year, they have published a clone plugin where you can actually clone an instance and bring it up. And as a third party, we have Percona, part of Percona Toolkit, Percona extra backup utility that you can actually have a hot backup. And then MyDumper is also widely used for logical backups. We actually call this extra backup as a physical backup because it's a full set of data set. And then MyDumper, you could actually have a parallel exports of your data and then also imports. On the MariaDB side, we have still a MySQL dump and a Maria backup, which is actually a fork of extra backup. And then the MyDumper also works on MariaDB side. So basically, MyDumper is an open source utility, and it works both on MySQL 8 Community Edition, Percona Server, or MariaDB for logical backups. What's the difference between MySQL dump and MyDumper? MyDumper has ability to multi-thread it, and it has a little bit more robust to configure compared to MySQL dump. Okay. A lot of information between the two. We're going a little fast. So now we have the internals of the MySQL 8 versus MariaDB. So MariaDB, yes, it's still MySQL. It still has these similar variables, and but there are some differences. And on MySQL 8 and MariaDB 10.4. there are more variables. Okay, it's not like only these variables are. I have another set of variables over here that I wanted to highlight, and those are actually not all of them. Okay, I just want to note that it's not all of them, but these are the important ones and can make a significant difference in your day-to-day database operation. So especially for the auto increment mode, and it comes with 2 and on 1 with the MariaDB. This basically related to auto increment locking and how strict you want to be. The second one is the log bin, is a binary logging, is enabled on MySQL 8. It wasn't before, and on MariaDB 10.4 it's still off. It comes in. So basically, binary logging is not enabled if you install fresh MariaDB 10.4 versus MySQL 8 does that. So all your transactions are written in the binary logs. There are some tuned variables. It looks like the MariaDB left it off of very small if you're like using a small instance. But MySQL 8 actually comes with a little bit more. The package size is increased because this is a common problem. It reaches maximum package size. The application errors out. So 64 seems to make sense. Open files limit is also they made it more robust to 10K, and big improvement on query cache. This is a big discussion over the years. Query cache was supposed to be improving database read operations, but it didn't turn that way because of the design flaws. There has been other blog posts, but this is the one of the latest blog posts from the MySQL server team that they have actually how they made that decision to disable, not disable, remove the query cache from MySQL server. And but MariaDB still has that, but it comes with it off. So basically, don't use it. If you have it query cache on, turn it off. Don't use it. Okay, so we also have look into the table open cache instances. It seems to be double the amount versus MariaDB. And then table open cache is increased. So what happens is you have more tables to manage, and MySQL 8 also internally has a data dictionary and some design changes. So it is explained to us that it's more cache is needed for open cache, open table cache. Okay. So we have some few other variables to look at it, but one thing that is actually interesting over here is the binlog format. So it's actually row-based replication for binlog format is row, and on MariaDB is still mixed between row and statement-based replication. So basically that's a difference. There's some deprecated values, and the other significant one over here is the sync binlog is 1, comes as a default 1, and MariaDB is still 0. So those are different. So basically, if you have an environment that actually uses these variables, and you must test before making a decision, don't take the defaults always. It may not work with the workload that you have. We always recommend to test it and basically come the best solution your business logic or the application needs, if that makes sense. There is also on the SQL mode there is some differences between the SQL mode, and over here binlog group commit sync delay is related to group replication, which doesn't exist in MariaDB. MariaDB uses Galera. If you're doing clustering, ExtraDB or MariaDB Galera clustering, then you would actually have a set of other variables to set in the group replication settings. Okay, so we're about 25 minutes in. We have a few slides on performance and benchmarks. So performance and benchmarks. This is a little topic itself, and thanks to Dimitri. Dimitri works at Oracle. I put all his blogs, talks, Twitter account, and he has a very detailed benchmarking methodology that he uses and extensively tests all the versions of MySQL and compares over different workloads, and then enlightens us with the scientific data. And I want to give credit to him over here. And let's take a look at about a few slides on the work that he has done. These are public information by Oracle, and it's available in their blogs and websites. And if you actually want to look into details of these, how these tests done, please follow the link. And then if there's any question we can help, you can point to us, or we could reach out to Dimitri for that. So looking at this read-only point select benchmark, I wanted to show you over here that was done on 8. This is probably around the most recent in April 2018 version of MySQL 8. So it's about like 6 months in a year. So at the moment there was 10.3. It wasn't actually 10.4, and unfortunately I did not find any 10.4 benchmarks. I did request from MariaDB if they actually have any public information available, and it wasn't available. So this is what we have. If you look at it, point selects 1.8 million query per second. MySQL 8 actually did very well up until 1,000 threads or so, and then you know, MySQL 5.6 actually saturated after 32 threads over here. So the other one over here, which MySQL 8 was pretty close to MariaDB 10.3. So they're actually going pretty close to each other. I mean, we cannot say there's a huge difference between MySQL 8 and MariaDB 10.3. I believe 10.4 will have better results with some optimizations, and then it gets pretty much good up until 64 to 128 threads, and then things get a little bit problematic after that. But so this is another read-only OLTP benchmark that was done, and so basically what is highlighted over here, it is 40% better than 5.7, and that was the idea, to show 8.0 improvements on the OLTP benchmarks. And here's another one for because of the character set UTF-8 and MB4 read-only point select. So the character set actually impacts the results of benchmarks. This is what the point over here actually. So if you have a complex character set that is set, the database response may be different. So there is a huge difference on 5.6, 5.7 and 8. They are very similar in terms of, and we have MariaDB 10.3 over here, which is super close to MySQL 8 result set. Okay. I think we have few more over here that actually there's like much more than that, but comparing to 5.7 on read-only distinct ranges on UTF-8 and MB4, this is another test. So MySQL 8 seems to be far above others, and it's still even beating 30% more than 5.7 in this benchmark. And the other one is OLTP read-write test that was done, and you see MariaDB had struggled on after 128. It's probably some sort of an optimization, but MySQL 8 actually remained very stable, and Percona server actually did very well in that test also with Latin 1, and this test actually shows that as you scale your number of connections, you have a performance degradation. Okay. The last one we have is actually on 10.4, interestingly. So because this was done in September 2019, and then MariaDB actually also shows performance degradation after 128 threads, where MySQL 8 and Percona server was much more less impact on a query per second. So again, there's a conclusion about all of these benchmarks, how they performed, what tools used, what parameters are used. We don't have time to get into all the details, but Dimitri has all the details in his benchmarks. So in conclusion, I have a very detailed MySQL 8 slide. So I pulled this one over from here from the ecosystem. What I want to highlight over here, on MySQL 8, Oracle changed the way that they deploy their updates. So there's no longer made a major upgrade or wait for it. They moved into continuous deployment and continuous integration. So as you can see, from 8, when it was G8, to 8.18, there's major differences in that. And they keep adding more features to the server. So 8.0.17, we mentioned the clone plugin, and then 8.0.18, hash joins and explain and analyze are coming up. These are all very major changes to the database server, and you get like a lot of, like, especially clone plugin is very, very important, and you have a lot of improvements over the, and there's more coming in, which I kind of know, and the majority of the work and the changes were done around group replication, the clustering solution, DB cluster. And a lot of the features also help group replication to, including the clone plugin. So basically you are able to clone a node and add a node to group replication cluster. And but it can be used for other purposes, and there's more coming in. And MySQL 8 is a great software, so that's what the point is. And same thing with the MariaDB. MariaDB is actually adding actively features, updates, improvements, optimizations. And if you look at 10.4 itself from 10.3, there's major changes, especially on the security and authentication. DB, they made some optimizer changes, and also Galera 4 is actually, from Galera 3 to Galera 4 is a big change. Actually, it's a major release, and it took a while to get it there. So 10.4.2, and later has with the Galera upgraded from Galera 3 to Galera 4. So that's the conclusion of those two. And I want to especially thank Daniel, Steven, and the rest of the crew who actually helped me put together this talk. And that's all I have for today. And we can move on to questions. Okay, that's 32 minutes. Okay, any questions? You have a question? Do we have a microphone? She has a microphone.
Thank you for your information and for all.
You're
and
welcome.
For selling especially. And I have a question. Can you cover a little bit of difference in performance schema between MySQL 8 and MariaDB, if they have some differences?
There are some differences, but I don't know off the top of my head for all the differences and changes. Basically, the number of variables, number of wait events that is collected in performance schema for MySQL 8 is slightly different than MariaDB because of, especially for group replication and other plugins that it has. And MariaDB actually uses Galera for clustering, so it has its own statistics. So we have to look into what are the differences and that. But the best way to do analysis is using PMM. PMM is Percona's monitoring and management. Are you using it? Do you have it? So what we suggest is actually have it installed and then point it to two servers, and then you can actually have a connection to both at the same time, create dashboards, and then compare one-to-one. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, he's first. Microphone, please.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question regarding to backup tools.
Yes.
In MySQL, starting from 5.7, we have a new tool, new logical tool, MySQL pump.
Yes.
In comparison with open source MyDumper, is the both tools has the same code, source code, or not, or it different functionality?
I believe they're not. Yes. But that's something I have not actually did a lot of research on it. MySQL pump, what I know, it comes from the Oracle world, and Oracle pump had been like, and the way that it worked in both Oracle and Informix was like using the memory, creates a buffer pool, and actually uses the memory for the transfer instead of the file system. So it actually skips the file system and does it. So.
So MySQL pump have functionality to split big tables into parts like
Yes.
MyDumper.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hard questions. You had another. Okay. He's first. Sorry, we have to go with the order.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for presentation. Question about, is it working? Question about data masking.
Yes.
Oracle Vault vs MySQL database with proxy SQL solution. Do you think second one are production ready?
Well,
as I understand, we data masking with query rules in proxy SQL level, right?
yes.
Good.
Yes, with query rules, you have to do like regex, and but it's inexpensive. So, and there's an overhead for it, and it's not like super. So when do you, if you need the, what I look at it, if you need the data masking in your production environment, you would have to go for like more commercial solution into it, because then you are actually not maintaining something that's becomes an overhead. With the ever-changing schema, you will have a problem with the data masking, because you have to maintain your regex, your filtering, and the proxy SQL. Also, the more query rules you have, there is a more CPU hit on your proxy layer. So the short answer for that is, it's a little bit of a gray area for like using an open source data masking for that. But it depends, you know, like if you're doing a simple thing and if it's on the testing environment, you know, like you just don't want to show production data to your developers, you could still use these, you know, cheap solutions.
Thanks.
We had one more question. Do we have time? Okay, we have time.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question regarding query cache.
Yes.
What is the reason why query cache was removed from MySQL 8?
Okay.
Is it absolutely useless, or why?
Okay, that's a good question. And the query cache, we have it over here. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So the query cache was actually supposed to improve the queries, right? The query time. And basically, your most frequent queries comes into the cache, and then you serve it without going into the disk. Basically, that was the idea. There are two problems in that. We've been discussing this for a long time, and then there's a detailed explanation in this blog. When it was discovered that two problems. One of them is the invalidating cache. So how do you invalidate the cache which is bundled in the database, which has no plugin? Okay, so normally if you have some cache, you would set a TTL, or you have a way to invalidate that cache, saying that this data is no longer valid. Otherwise, you create an inconsistent data, right? The other problem is on a multi-threaded database that actually receives a lot of connections and then has an internal connections to the buffer pool, you only have a one lock per query cache. So that creates a contention and overhead. Turned out to be actually not useful on a high load environment, high traffic environment. It actually became a cumbersome disadvantage. And because of that, it's been long discussions. We've been recommending not to turn on query cache since 5.6, 5.7, and eventually on 8, Oracle team decided this no longer by design is good. If you need to use a cache, use something else that you can actually set TTL, invalidate, and be able to monitor it. Again, instead of using query cache in MySQL, using something like proxy SQL's cache is better. And what do you cache? Okay, count stars. You know, it's not going to something that not changes, but it actually gets created a lot. You could do that, and then you can set TTL, and then it'll expire after some time, gets renewed, and it is literally zero overhead to the backend database. It remains in the proxy layer. Does that answer your question? A little bit.
Was it cache for each row, or was it cache for pages? How?
Yeah, ask the question again.
In general, about query cache, was it cache for each row, or is it cache for pages? Why is it difficult to invalidate it? And
it gets cached for a data set.
Thank you.
So it's pages, basically. Okay.
Okay, thank you for your speech. I have questions regarding to JSON. As I know, MySQL 8, they noted that have big improvement working with JSON functions, like partial updates and etc. Do you know something in MariaDB, or maybe you already compared like work with JSON columns?
So that's a good question. I am not a JSON expert, but I know MySQL 8, there has been like a big improvements on MySQL 8 with JSON. On MariaDB side, I do not know the answer, so something to look at it. Are you using JSON within the database?
Yes.
With MySQL?
Yes, with MySQL 8.
Okay. And
yeah, it's nice.
Okay. So just to recap that question, the adoption on using, you know, our DBMS and JSON in the same engine is not very common.
Yeah, I know, but
so
anyway,
but it's good. It's there. It's useful. It's good to hear that it's being used. But I don't know the answer for MariaDB side.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, hard questions coming in. Any other hard questions that I don't know? It's good.
Hello, thank you. Can you give a conclusion? Which of these two systems has a real working master-master replication?
Okay, master-master replication, don't use it. So master-master replication is a no-go with MySQL. It's none of them actually. The reason is that the reason master-master doesn't work is if the master-master worked properly, the way that it was designed, they would not make a clustering solution. So basically, the master-master doesn't work, but we have what is that? Okay. A clustering solution. So the reason, basically, master-master is available on Galera distribution. So you can have multi-write nodes, n number of nodes within your Galera or Percona XtraDB cluster. Is it recommended? It's not.
It's not.
So we still write to single node and read from other nodes. Okay. But by design, on a write-set replication, you can write multiple nodes. So that's like a kind of a workaround solution for master-master. Writing master-master has other design problems. While MySQL allows you to do that, but it's not recommended. So it's not part of the best practice. You can actually set master-slave to each other and then do it. But in 2019, don't. If you need to do that, you know, have a slave ready, and set up an orchestrator or MHA to do a failover to that node. So that's the better answer for not having a master-master, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we have time for other questions? Any other questions? So, from this audience, who uses MariaDB in production? Okay, and who is in MySQL? Okay, okay. Anybody on MySQL 8 in production? Okay, wow, we got some nice adoption to MySQL 8. By the way, MySQL 8 is the fastest adopted version in MySQL history, and it's widely adopted, and it's getting much more popularity into it in recent years. Okay. I guess.
Okay, Alkin, we want to thank you for your speech. We are very glad to have you here. We have a little present for you.
Oh, thank you.
Девочки, можно подарок Алкину, пожалуйста? So, yeah.
Oh. Thank you.
There you go. And now we want to ask you to choose two best questions. Which one did you like?
Well, I liked all of them, so it's gonna be hard. I think the query cache question was good. That's something to highlight, and thank you for asking that, iterating that. Thank you.
Yeah, Thank you. Can you please tell your name, where do you work, and why did you ask this question?
My name is Iюнь. I'm working for Godel Technologies Europe. And I ask it because we have query cache enabled on our database.
Okay.
And,
now he's going to go back and read that blog post.
Okay.
Okay.
I will do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the second.
The second question. So, what was the second question we had? I think I like that MySQL 8 and JSON question as a second question. Thank you for asking that. Something that Oracle actually puts a lot of time and effort in it, and my friend David Stokes actually writes a book about that. So,
I work on Badu, and we already using MySQL 8. It was an experiment, but we keep it, and yeah. I mean, MySQL 8 and JSON columns. So
JSON columns.
Yeah.
Are you also upgrading to the latest sub-releases, or are you not? Like, what version are you on? 8.0?
We use, I think, the latest Percona MySQL 8 version.
8, okay,
yeah.
15, 14 or 15, yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks Alkin.
All right.
We were very glad to see you here.
Thank you very much.